The first transmission arrived wrapped in ceremony and threat. Every screen on Earth, from orbital stations to handheld devices, lit with the same symbol, a rotating sigil of interlocked species, ancient and cold, the Galactic Council, foremost of humanity. It was the first undeniable proof that we were no longer alone. For the politicians and admirals who had suspected this day would come, it was confirmation of their worst assumptions. The message was translated instantly, stripped of emotion by machine logic, but heavy with implication. By authority of the Galactic Council, recognized sovereign of this spiral arm, the emergent species designated human is hereby assessed a standard integration tribute. Compliance is mandatory, non-compliance will result in corrective action. The list followed. Resources, rare earth elements, water ice from the Kuiper Belt, helium-3 harvested from gas giants. Technology, all faster than light research data, all AI development logs, all military propulsion schematics. Population, 10 million humans, voluntary labor allocation, to be distributed among Council member states. The final line was the one history would remember. Yield, and you will be permitted to exist. For several seconds after the transmission ended, the world was silent. Then the noise began. Panic in the streets, markets collapsing, governments scrambling to issue statements that meant nothing because no one knew what to say. Humanity had dreamed of first contact for centuries. We imagined greetings, alliances, warnings, maybe even salvation. We did not imagine extortion. Within hours, emergency sessions were called across Earth. The United Nations General Assembly became a fortress of activity. Military channels buzzed non-stop. Scientists argued, economists despaired, religious leaders prayed or proclaimed doom, depending on their temperament. But the most important meeting happened far from public view, beneath kilometers of reinforced stone and layered chutes, in a chamber built not just to survive war, but to make decisions no one else wanted to make. Admiral Sofia Ramirez stood at the center of the room, hands clasped behind her back, eyes fixed on the holographic projection of the Council sigil. Around her Saturday generals, admirals, intelligence chiefs, and civilian leaders from every major power bloc on Earth. Old rivals Saturday side by side, not out of goodwill, but because extinction had a way of simplifying politics. They want tribute, one of the diplomats said quietly, as if speaking too loudly might summon alien fleets out of hyperspace. This is how they operate. Historical records we intercepted years ago suggested something like this. Ramirez nodded. Tribute isn't partnership, it's subjugation. As scientists leaned forward, we can't fight them. Their ships based on what little sensor data we have outclass ours by generations. Yielding might be the only rational option. A murmur of agreement rippled through part of the room. General Alcaya slammed his palm on the table. Yield what? Our people, our future. Once we give in, there will be another demand, and another. We will be livestock in all but name. The room fell into argument, voices rising, overlapping. Yield and survive, resist and die, bargain, delay, hide. There were no good options, only degrees of unacceptable. Ramirez listened without interrupting. When the noise reached a breaking point, she spoke. Everyone here is asking the wrong question, she said. They turned toward her. The question is not whether we can beat the Galactic Council in a conventional war, she continued. We can't, not today, not tomorrow. The question is whether yielding actually guarantees survival. Silence followed. She activated another hologram. This one displayed fragments of alien history, pieced together from intercepted transmissions, ancient probes, and half-decoded archives humanity had been quietly collecting for decades. Every species that paid tribute lost something essential, Ramirez said. Autonomy, innovation, population growth, military independence, and over time, most of them disappeared, absorbed, reduced, forgotten. As civilian leaders followed, so resistance means annihilation, compliance means slow death. Yes, Ramirez said, which means we must choose how we face extinction. No one liked that answer. The Council did not wait long. 12 hours after the first transmission, a second arrived, this one colder, stripped of ceremony. Time allotted for compliance, 72 standard cycles. Then came the demonstration. At the edge of the solar system, beyond Neptune, a Council enforcement flotilla dropped out of faster than light travel. No shots were fired, no threats issued. They simply activated a weapon and erased a rogue comet from existence. reducing a mountain of ice and stone into expanding vapor in less than a second. Every telescope on Earth saw it. The message was clear. We can do worse. Public opinion fractured. Some demanded immediate surrender. Others called for defiance. Protests erupted, not against governments, but against the universe itself. Humanity had reached the stars only to be told to kneel. In a small city halfway across the world, a history teacher named Daniel Wu stood in front of his class, watching the news feed projected onto the wall. His students were unusually quiet. "Sir," one of them asked, voice trembling, "are we going to die?" Daniel thought of the stories he had taught them, of empires that rose and fell, of invasions, resistances, collapses, of people who had faced impossible odds and still chosen to stand. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I know this isn't the first time someone has demanded we stop being who we are." Across the planet, in shipyards and laboratories, something shifted. Engineers who had been cautious became reckless. Scientists who had argued over funding shared data without hesitation. Militaries that have once guarded secrets like treasure opened their vaults. If this was the end, humanity would not go quietly. 72 hours became 48. The Galactic Council sent observers, massive, angular vessels that parked themselves at the edge of the heliosphere, their presence a constant reminder of the ticking clock. Their communications grew sharper. Compliance is the optimal outcome. Resistance will be corrected. Behind closed doors, humanity made its choice. The response was not immediate. It was not dramatic. It was carefully, deliberately human. At the 59th hour, the Galactic Council received a transmission from Earth. It did not come from one government or one leader. It came from a unified channel, signed by every recognized authority on the planet. The image resolved into a single human figure, standing against a backdrop of Earth seen from orbit. Admiral Ramirez, in full uniform, eyes steady. "Galactic Council," she began, voice calm, "you have demanded tribute." She paused, just long enough to ensure they were listening. "We refuse." There was no anger in her tone, no bravado, just certainty. "We will not surrender our people," she continued. "We will not strip our world to feed an empire built on fear. We will not yield our future for the privilege of existing under your shadow." The Council's reply was instantaneous. "Defiance noted. Enforcement will commence." Ramirez inclined her head slightly. "We expected no less." The transmission cut. In deep space, Council fleets began to move. What the Galactic Council did not understand that they had never truly encountered was a species that had evolved not as a single empire, but as a patchwork of competing cultures, nations, and ideologies, forged through constant internal conflict. Humanity had spent thousands of years preparing for wars against itself. Now, for the first time, all of that preparation had a single target. The first battle did not happen near Earth. It happened far from any planet, in a region of space humanity had quietly filled with sensors, drones, and experimental platforms. When the Council's advanced fleet crossed an invisible threshold, space itself seemed to fracture. Gravity wells flared into existence where none should be. Not enough to destroy ships outright, but enough to throw off their formation. Two stress holes designed for predictable physics. Human weapons fired next, not energy beams or plasma cannons, but clouds of autonomous projectiles, each one simple, cheap, and terrifyingly adaptive. They did not seek to overpower shields. They sought seams, patterns, weaknesses. Council commanders reacted with shock. This was not how primitive species fought. This was not how tribute worlds behaved. They adapted, of course. They always did. Several human platforms were obliterated within minutes. But for the first time in centuries, Council ships were damaged by a species that had been deemed insignificant. Reports flooded back to the Council chambers. Unexpected resistance. Enemy tactics highly irregular. Losses within acceptable parameters, but non-zero. The phrase non-zero echoed uncomfortably through the ancient halls. At Earth, humanity watched the battle unfold through delayed feeds. Every explosion was felt like a punch to the gut. Every surviving human platform was a small, defiant miracle. The Council escalated. A second wave arrived, heavier, more brutal. Entire regions of space were saturated with fire. Human defenses buckled. Stations died screaming in bursts of static and light. And yet, something strange happened. Human ships did not retreat toward Earth. They scattered. Council tacticians round as formations broke pursuit to chase fleeing targets. That was when the traps activated, mines that bend spacetime, relays that hijack targeting systems for precious seconds, sacrificial drones that broadcast false signatures, drawing fire away from critical assets. The cost was horrific. Tens of thousands of humans died in the first weeks of fighting. Names that would never be known being encrypted casualty lists, families who would receive quiet messages and no bodies to bury. But the Council lost ships. Not many, not enough to threaten them. Enough to matter. Across the galaxy, other species watched, tributary worlds, client states, species that had paid their dues for generations, believing resistance was impossible. They saw humans say no. They saw humans bleed and keep fighting. They saw Council fleets slowed, frustrated, forced to adapt instead of dictate. Whispers spread through hidden channels. If they can resist, what else is possible? The Council changed tactics again. Direct assault gave way to punishment. Human colonies at the edge of the system were targeted. Infrastructure shattered. Cities burned under orbital fire. The Council sent another message. Cease resistance, submit, and devastation will end. The reply came from Earth, not from a single voice, but millions. The transmission was a compilation, doctors working in shattered hospitals, engineers repairing power grids under bombardment, soldiers standing watch over evacuation corridors, teachers leading children into shelters while still teaching them to read. Over it all, a simple statement repeated in countless languages. We will not yield. The war dragged on. Months turned into years. Humanity adapted faster than the Council believed possible. Weapons were redesigned mid-conflict. Tactics evolved weekly. AI systems learned, died, and were reborn better each time. The Council, bound by tradition and hierarchy, began to struggle. Their fleets were powerful, but inflexible. Their commanders were experienced, but unused to an enemy that refused to behave rationally. And then came the moment that changed everything. A human task force, outnumbered and outgunned, executed what analysts would later call the most audacious maneuver in recorded history. They did not defend Earth. They did not strike a fleet. They struck a Council logistics hub, a massive, ancient structure that supplied enforcement fleets across half the spiral arm. Humanity had found it by following patterns, by thinking not like conquerors, but like insurgents. The attack was a one-way mission. The hub was destroyed. The shockwaves rippled far beyond the battlefield. Council supply lines faltered. Fleets stalled. Tributary systems went not from destruction, but from hesitation. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session not to demand tribute, but to ask a question they had long forgotten how to answer. What is the cost of conquest? The war did not end with a decisive victory. There was no triumphant final battle, no shattered Council capital. Instead, there was negotiation. Careful, tense, unprecedented. The Council's final message to Earth was nothing like the first. Humanity, it read, your species has demonstrated unacceptable resistance parameters. Continued conflict is inefficient. The human response was equally measured. We warned you, Admiral Ramirez said, older now, scarred, but undoubled. We told you we would not yield. A new agreement was signed, not tribute, not submission. Recognition. Humanity was acknowledged as a sovereign power outside the tribute system. The Council withdrew its fleets, not in defeat, but in something dangerously close to respect. Across the galaxy, other worlds watched as the enforcers left Earth's system untouched. For the first time in ages, the Council's authority had limits. Years later, Daniel would tell his students about that moment. They demanded tribute. He would say, looking at faces born after the war, they offered us survival if we surrendered who we were. He would smile, just slightly, and we reminded the galaxy of something important. The students would lean forward. That humans don't exist by permission. He would finish, we exist because we refuse to stop.